we're after it. Almost every show, people ask where the theme song's from. It's from my friend Brian Hegney. You can check him out on Spotify, Now That I Am, all one word. His music doesn't sound like this, but it's very good.
Awesome. You did a great job. I dig this.
Always gets me hyped. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen, probably mostly gentlemen. I know we have a couple of ladies who tune in every once in a while. Honestly, I have the most ladies I get in my comment section is on one video I did about how women dress at the gym. And that thing just is continuing to rake in the comments. And the women are pretty split. Half of them are like, just how dare you tell women what to wear? Just control your own eyes, pervert. And then the other half of the women are like, yeah, no. This is insane, the way that women are dressing today. So to my gentlemen out there, and maybe the stray lady that wandered into this, welcome to the Man vs. World show. I'm Mark Weppett, joined as always by Pete.
Yes, sir.
How you doing, buddy?
I'm awesome. How are you?
Doing good. Derek, who's been on the last few episodes, he's not here with us today. I'm sure we'll be back because we're going to still keep talking about God mode, but today we're shifting topics a little bit in light of the new Reforged Man Gold cohort we got coming up here soon. That's our program for helping guys quit porn. It's like our very intensive program where you're getting individual attention and all kinds of stuff like that. It's, as far as I know, it's the best porn recovery program on the planet. And so I figured it's a good time to revisit one of the big things that comprises that whole versus world part of the Man versus World show. Because, as a man today, one of the biggest enemies that's in your path is for sure pornography. It is going to be holding you back big time. And you guys hopefully already know this. If you don't, you can always check out, I have a playlist. It's called the Sexual Self-Mastery Series. And many guys say that that's some of the best stuff they've ever found on YouTube about quitting pornography. So you can start there. But I also got something brand new for you guys too. It's called the Porn Free Masterclass. I just recorded it. I actually recorded it with GIF, who is basically the only guy I trust right now to teach my content, and I have him help me run the Reforged Man Gold cohort. And in it, I've covered some updated thoughts on the best strategies for quitting porn. You can get this totally for free if you click the link in the description. So hopefully you guys check that out if you are interested at all in quitting pornography.
Awesome. Well, we've been talking a lot about God mode, but I would like to talk about how does quitting porn fit into God mode, because I don't think they're necessarily, islands unto themselves. I think there's some shared ground there. Yeah. So could you dive into that?
Yeah, absolutely. So if you missed the previous episodes or whatever, God mode is an operating system for helping you live in alignment with basically God's will for you. Okay. It's very Christian focused because I'm Christian. But even non-Christian people can learn how to basically, find your design and work with that. Okay. And at the heart of this whole thing, I guess there's kind of two big concepts. One is this idea of your dignity, which is your inherent goodness, which solves a lot of problems once you understand how it works. But in relation to this conversation here, the other piece is a little bit, maybe not more important, because porn goes against your dignity. I would say it's a devaluing of your own sexual worth. I believe that the highest expression of your sexuality is either through transmutation, where you turn that sexual energy into a fire for becoming the best man that you can be. And we can talk even a little bit about that sexual transmutation stuff if you're interested in it. And the other piece, though, is that the other expression would be to use your sexuality in a loving, committed relationship. That's where you're going to get the most deep pleasure, fulfillment, and the lowest number of negative consequences. Okay. So porn attacks that stuff. That's at the heart of God mode. Okay. So that's huge. But on a more like practical, like tactical level, God mode is about resonance. And resonance is this intersect between instinct and intellect. We know when we are operating in resonance because it feels like things have clicked. Something sounds right and it also feels right. So, there are a lot of times where we're only operating in, one of these frames. So if you're feeling like forced to do all the stuff you quote unquote should do, that's not resonance. That's you operating off of intellect. And this is like a grind. This is hard to maintain. But then on the flip side, if you're operating from too much instinct, well, it might feel good in the moment, but if you think about it at all, you're like, this is a bad idea. This is going to have negative consequences down the road. And you just want to kind of stop thinking about it and let future self deal with that problem. Like there's a great, there's like a famous Simpsons moment where like Homer, like, what did he do? He like poured like vodka into like a jar of mayonnaise or something and like drank it. And like, that's future Homer's problem or something like that. That's going off of like pure instinct. And really what we want to find is the place where both instinct and intellect align. And when we get to that point, it feels really good. It sounds really good. And learning how to discern that and apply that ability to every area of your life is the key to your highest performance. It's the key to unlocking your like mission in life. Because when you walk that balance beam between these 2 points, there's only like one way that you can go in any given situation, because there will only be one most resonant path. And it really kind of just plots your course through life. And I would argue that this is like the call of the Holy Spirit. This is God's will for you. And that's what God mode is all about, is helping you do that. And so you can check out the previous podcast if you want to hear a little bit more about God mode. But when it comes to pornography and other kinds of intense escapes like this, I would say that like how they factor in is that they are like psycho-spiritual interference. They're contaminants, okay? And what I mean by this is that they distort or inhibit your ability to find and feel resonance in your life. So easy example would be like, after a porn binge, you're going to be in like this state where you just blasted all your dopamine out. Okay. You're going to feel like depleted on some level. Yeah. Maybe you're going to feel a little less anxious. For some of you out there, you're going to feel actually more anxious if you've got like any sort of moral character. But in reality, like what that then puts you into is a state where you're going to be like evaluating your paths with a different brain state. And that dopamine hangover state, that's not the one where you're going to find your best path. What resonates with you after doing something like that is not your most dignified resonance. And this is why like, bad behaviors tend to breed more bad behaviors. Like, an escalation example of this would be something I deal with clients quitting porn all the time is they'll start by just like, binging on some YouTube in the evening. And then as they just keep clicking, they're not quite scratching the itch. They just want more and more pleasure. Then they start, stuffing junk food in their face. Okay. Maybe they'll start drinking or they'll, smoke a little pot or something like that. And eventually, they keep grasping for a higher and higher level of pleasure because each action is like putting a new like filter on their perception of what should I do next. And, and then they end up at porn. And this kind of thing has a dramatic impact on like the person that you are, the headspace that you're in. And I would say that like everything kind of does this to some degree. You have to constantly be evaluating like, what are you putting into your body? What are you putting into your mind? Is this equipping you to be able to better discern that higher resonance? Or is it putting you in a place where you're not even going to be able to conceive of that higher resonance? Like, a guy post porn binge or post video game binge or whatever it is, he's not going to be able to like be effectively thinking about like his optimum self. All right. It's just going to be stunted. It's going to be blocked. And because of that, like every single decision that he makes from that point is going to be so much more limited. And one of the things that can even happen, which is almost the most torturous state, is that maybe it doesn't completely block you from thinking of your higher self or the right path, but it'll block you from being able to connect with it. Okay. So like, for example, me back when I was a porn addict, like 10 years ago, I had a very strong vision still of who I wanted to be, like in the abstract. But the issue was that my emotional state, my instinctual aspect was so jacked up from this hyper stimulus of pornography that I was unable to actually get myself to follow through and work on that path, right? And so this is something that I think, this is like at the heart of the whole dopamine detox idea, is that like when you're blowing all your dopamine on low value behaviors, your dopamine will not respond to higher value behaviors because typically they're not as insanely enticing. So like to summarize the answer here is that like pornography is one of the biggest blockers to that's keeping guys from operating in God mode, i.e. in the state of extreme high resonance of, this sounds right, this feels great, and being able to move with like high levels of passion in their life.
That makes a lot of sense. And from my Christian perspective, looking at that, a lot of Christian people speaking Christianese would call that the hardening of the heart, right? Because you're engaging in behavior that violates your conscience. So you can't trust your conscience as much. You can't trust that soulish realm that we all have. And so that comes to mind when you're talking about that. So what are some practical ways to soften that up? What does a dopamine detox look like, and how does somebody pull that off?
Sure. So like dopamine detox, I would, as one of the guys who kind of brought that idea to prominence, you can go check the timelines on the search terms. I don't think I was the very first one, but I was one of the first ones with a big video and stuff around that idea. It's a broad category of activities where you pull out some low value, high stimulation activity. And as you do that, you're going to go through almost like this withdrawal period where your brain resensitizes. So, your brain can be conditioned from two different ways. I mean, there's a bunch of different ways your brain can be conditioned, but like the two main ways are pleasure or pain. Okay. And so we become desensitized to things when especially like pleasure, bad habits, they cause desensitization through excess pleasure. So, you get too much pleasure in one area, all of a sudden it doesn't hit you as much anymore, so you need more and more. This is the idea of addiction where things escalate, and this applies to porn just as much. And so what we do with a detox is, well, you're going to go through some discomfort, but that discomfort will actually break down those old neural pathways, and that will resensitize your brain. It'll put it back into a more healthy, normal baseline. And when we apply this specifically to quitting porn, it's called a reboot, or in the way that I teach, it's called a reforge, because like when you do this behavior, when you use pornography repeatedly, especially if you're someone who is in a state of moral opposition to using pornography, the only way that you can keep using porn while being morally against it is developing what I call the split mind. And so the split mind is where one part of you is like this little golem-like porn fiend, but then this other part of you like has your normal, high-level morals and values. And so it's like this split occurs in your mind. And so in the process of going through a reforge or a reboot or whatever, what you're doing is you're trying to reconnect those two pieces. You're getting that higher level moral part of yourself to reintegrate and guide that part that's fallen to the wayside, to the path of porn, back to a more authentic mode of operation.
One of the things that you pointed out to me one day that really blew my mind when we were talking about this stuff is you were talking about how you can't just listen, or you can't just speak to that other part of yourself first. You have to first listen to them. And there's it's funny because in Romans somewhere.
You're talking about the porn addicted part, right?
Yes, exactly. Because when you have part of you that's engaging in inauthentic behavior, we're tempted out of pride, I think, to look at that piece as something other and to say, I'm not going to listen to you, so shut up. And you listen to me. But the goodness of God leads people to repentance. And the softening of the ground, you can pull a weed out of concrete. I don't know if you've ever seen cracked concrete with weeds all over it. You pull the weeds out of there, weeds will grow anywhere. It'll grow in the hardest places. You pull that weed out, the root will still be in there and it'll pop back out immediately. The next day you'll go out there, it'll be there. You have to soften the ground. And the way you do that is by listening first. That's a big piece of how you bring these two components together. Am I correct in that?
Yes. Because in most cases, especially where the porn problem is very difficult, the person's like tried multiple times to quit, they can't quite do it. In those situations, usually what's going on is that the porn problem it exists because there is some unaddressed pain or issue in your life that the higher level part of you is not helping out with. So like this emotional part of you, it's like, hey, we got this problem here. Porn's helping us with it. And if the higher level part of you is just saying, well, you got to stop doing it, but it doesn't offer any guidance on how to actually solve the underlying issue, the root of the weed of the problem,
right?
Then it's going to keep springing up. And usually like these problems, they are repressed. They are unconscious at first, or only partially understood, because we've been repressing them. We've been using porn to push them down. So it makes sense that if you really want to solve this thing, is you have to listen to this part of you and understand that, hey, I get you want to use porn. Okay, well, let's put a pause on that for a second. Like, but what happens if we don't? What are you going to have to deal with? What's the problem that you feel like you need to escape in this fantasy realm to be okay, right? And so, yeah, the listening part is really huge.
And another a reason why I think, and looking back at my life, one reason why I think I've failed to do that in the past is because I didn't believe that there was a genuine solution for the problem. But what's interesting is when you start this work and you go through the process, you find out really quickly that oftentimes the problem is really not as big of a deal as you thought. And sometimes writing it down solves the problem. It's really sometimes that simple. Sometimes not. I can imagine there's sometimes you have a problem that's legitimately so terrible that you don't want to face it in your life. But a lot of the times it's just like these little stupid lies that start out so small, but they become a big deal in your own brain, and you become an elephant, trapped by the fear of mice swimming in his head when there's no mice there at all. It's really interesting.
Yes. And like the thing is, like with every problem, okay, either there's some kind of practical solution or there's some kind of mindset solution. Sometimes it's a combination of both. That's usually the best kind of approach, but there's one or the other. Okay, because maybe there's some issue, it's causing you emotional distress. There's nothing practically that you can do about it. But you can for sure change your mindset around it so that it doesn't affect you so much, right? And the thing is, the only way you're going to find what the solution looks like, and particularly the only way you're going to find a solution that really resonates with you, which is really the key here. Like you can't just take some pre-prescribed solution and just, be like, oh, well, Mark says it's this, and then so, it'll work for me. Sometimes that's the case, but like in most situations, really where you're going to find that solution is through this deep self-talk, through this like journaling, through like, we take you through a whole process in the Reforged Man program of like how to identify, diagnose, and fix these underlying issues from both a practical and mindset standpoint. But yeah, that's pretty much how you got to do it.
Yeah. One of my favorite TED Talks is from this guy named P0rn. And I don't know why his talk, I find it so funny and amusing, but I do. And he's talking about procrastination.
Is he a country music guy?
P0rn? No, maybe. There's
Something
probably
urban?
somebody.
Keith Urban?
Keith Urban.
I don't know.
That's who you're thinking of. He should play more with John Mayer. I don't know if you've heard those guys play together, but they're fantastic. Yeah. Anyway, P0rn, different guy. He's got this TED Talk on procrastination, and he has these two characters of the instant gratification monkey. Well, actually, there's three. The rational decision maker, the instant gratification monkey, and then the fear monster. And he's using these three characters to paint this illustration of why people procrastinate. And he says, and the reason why procrastinators can be high functioning is because the fear monster comes out and scares away the instant gratification monkey, and he runs up the tree. And then the rational decision maker has time to correct the steering, right? And then he makes it the point at the end of this TED Talk, he makes the point that a lot of times the panic monster, that only shows up when the deadline is very close to approaching and magically gives you the motivation to plow through a 12-page paper and submit it on time. That fear monster doesn't show up when there's no deadline to draw him out. Right. And so he says that people are facing procrastination on a macro scale where there's no deadline. And so therefore, people just go about their life and they do the instant gratification monkey thing. And then they go, oh, that's not good. I know that's not good deep inside. So I'm going to take the steering wheel back and we're going to da-da-da-da. But they never actually have any source of drive to make a really big change, because the pain of change is greater than the pain of staying the same, or at least the perceived pain of staying the same is less. So if you were talking to a guy and this is his issue, and he's tried to quit before, but he's like, you know what? It's really not that big a deal because I'm only using porn every once in a while. And yeah, I don't really, maybe my morals don't really align with that, but that's okay. I'm just going to pretend I don't have a problem, and I'm going to just every once in a while mess up and it'll be okay. The pain of staying the same is less than the perceived pain of change. What do you say to those guys out there?
So to use that analogy you've laid out here, it's about learning how to work with the instant gratification monkey better, and teach him that, hey, there's other ways to be gratified here. And some of that's going to be practical. Like, hey, instead of using porn, maybe you need a break. Maybe you need some more fun in your life. Maybe you need more socialization. Maybe you need to just have a meal. Like, it's very contextual based upon your patterns and issues and stuff like that. So that's huge. But then it's also a mindset aspect too, where it's like, is your perception of the world in front of you distorted and negative and making your life more unpleasant than it actually needs to be? Is there a mindset that we can step into where life starts to gain some vividness, some magic to it? Like, is there a way to reframe things so that doing the quote unquote right thing actually feels great, right? And this is about like looking at your life holistically, almost as like an art project, where it's like, hey, every single moment I can craft the best moment possible. And there's a lot of techniques that you can learn, and stuff like mindset abilities and self-care techniques and all this kind of stuff that is all really useful. But at the end of the day, what it comes down to is leveraging your own creative faculty to make goodness moment to moment, and to give that gratification monkey alternative pathways to explore and play in. Now, this is something that might have to go kind of slow and methodically, especially if your gratification monkey has been, injected with drugs repeatedly and is currently an addict. Okay, so like that's where we need to have some more leverage to it. We need to have a vision. And that's where we get into like the God mode stuff, this idea of the future self, and if you can get a nice vivid picture of that future self, then one that really resonates with you, then that gives that instant gratification monkey something to work toward. And if you do it right, at least.
Yeah. I was talking to a guy, I met this guy who was abducted into a gang when he was 11 years old. He shot up heroin.
Inducted or abducted?
What's the difference?
Abducted means you were like kidnapped.
No, he wasn't kidnapped. He wasn't kidnapped.
Okay. Inducted. So he was, okay.
Yeah. So anyway, point is, wild stories. This guy's got insane stories. The most insane of anyone I've ever met in my life. But the way he quit drugs is he went to prison, and the only way to get drugs was to do gay stuff. He didn't say stuff, but you get the idea. And so he decided, no, I'll just die. I'll just I'll just die and not do heroin. I guess that's my way out of heroin. And so he died, and then they resuscitated him, and that's how he quit. And I go,
Well,
there's got to be a better way. You know what I mean? Like that. It seems like there's got to be. I mean, I'm glad it worked for him. I'm glad he's off and he's clean now. But there's got to be a better way to get clean from this stuff than just the pain itself. And I think that's where that vision comes in that you're talking about.
yeah, I think that's really the key. I mean, like for someone with a very acute chemical addiction like heroin and stuff like that, that's almost always going to take some kind of external intervention. You know, so if it wasn't prison, it would be something like a rehab center or something like that. But porn addiction is luckily not on that level, which in a way creates its own sort of challenges because there isn't this like universal infrastructure for getting off of it. And also the excuse for staying on it is much easier to make. It's like, oh, well, it's not killing me. It's not hurting anyone. Hell, it's not even costing me any money. Although it's definitely costing you money because there's no way that you're making as much money as you could be if you were, clean and clear of mind. But yeah, that's that vision piece is so important.
Yeah, it is. What do you think has helped you the most in taking the limitations off of your vision? Because you're somebody who's self-employed. You don't really need to scale your business if you don't want to. You could just work solo. You could just do coaching clients. You could stay at the level of impact that you have, which is more than most people. What do you think is the thing that drives you to accomplish what you want to accomplish?
The desire for more fun. That's the biggest thing. Yeah. Because it's like, I can run a successful solo coaching business. But behind the scenes, we're working very hard to figure out how we scale this thing. Right. But I want to be able to have way more fun. I don't want to do anything I don't want to do. I'm just constantly driven by this idea to live in greater and greater resonance where I can do things that just light me up more and more. And for me, like that's a combinatory effect of like being able to pursue the things that I'm most passionate about while also making people really happy. Like it jazzes me up. Like I get hyped when I help someone create a breakthrough. I change someone's perspective on something, and then they go on to not only live a better life, but then impact other people even more. Just, it makes me so excited. Yeah. And so like, that's what it comes down to, where it's like, eventually that's a far more powerful motivator than to be running away from pain. But I don't want to knock running away from pain, because if you're in a lot of pain, that's a hefty motivator. Yeah. And that's where a lot of guys start. If they're not in a great spot and they're coming to quit porn, then it's like, start there. Start with that being the motivator, being like, okay, well, what are all the ways in which porn is creating pain in your life? Well, it's, maybe it's causing sexual dysfunction, which is super common. Maybe you've got some kind of, troubling fetishes that don't sit right with your moral system. Maybe it's screwing up your relationships. Maybe it's keeping you from being able to approach women. Maybe it's screwing up the relationship you do have. Maybe you're married and your partner is like furious about it, or, it's killing your sex life. There's a number of different ways that porn can screw you up. I mean, and as time progresses, a lot of guys are actually spending more and more money on this kind of stuff too, as the pornography creators have become more inventive on how to monetize their work. So yeah, like start there. And then as you start moving away from that pain, like the big thing you want to do though is start finding, well, what are you working toward, right? You got to have the push. All right, here's the thing I'm trying to push out of my life, or I'm trying to push myself away from. But what are you pulling yourself toward? And when you get both going, that's when you have maximum psychological and emotional leverage.
Makes sense. You look at all the highest performing people. I don't think Elon Musk dislikes rockets. You know what I mean? I don't think that really just drives him nuts. Oh, man, we have a launch today. Again? Man, this sucks. I should get into something else, Right. You look at all those most successful people, they really are on fire for what they do. And so I think maybe for most people, the pain is what gets them going. And then what keeps you progressing must be that desire for greater fulfillment or whatever. I don't know, but that positive vision must keep dragging them forward. So
I think it can. I think there's some people don't ever get there. They just like, it seems like Michael Jordan.
a lot of people do.
Michael Jordan, he just kept like using that fear of not being the best to drive him forward. So there's ways to like, trap yourself in the fear-based mode, I think. And even if you can, master that energy, that's still the paradigm you're operating off of. And I've worked out of that for a long time, and it's not worth it. You can have a lot more fun and still be pursuing extreme high performance.
Yeah. One of the big reasons that I've even seen you write emails about this in the past when it comes to motivating factors for quitting porn is the rise of technology that's coming in to basically make it even more stimulating, even more addictive, even more potent. And even just recently, there was this article of an OnlyFans star who is leveraging AI to basically scale her operation here, because she's set up a chat bot with voice memos, because they have AI voice now. She can clone her voice and set up these chat bots so she can be chatting to people even though she's not. And it'll even take like a selfie of her and stuff and send like a photo of her in her car or something. Crazy wild stuff. And this is just the beginning. I feel like it's going to get way, way worse.
Yeah, this is going to get way worse. I know this. She's like one of the most popular, I think, Twitch streamers. So like she already has like a massive army of like, simps essentially, who pay her a lot of money. And what she's doing is great for her business model, which is monetizing simps. And it's insane, because this is just like the tip of the iceberg of what's coming in this. Because in some ways, I wonder if this is the stuff that's driving the technological advancement. It's hard to say like whether porn hijacks all new technology or if it actually ends up driving it. I mean, I know in some cases pornography has actually driven technological advancement. They say it's like sex work is like the oldest like form of commerce.
Profession. Yeah,
the oldest profession, right? So I mean, there's definitely an argument to be made there. And frankly, I'd settle for whatever technology we would build without that. But regardless, like we are going to see a movement toward this kind of thing, I think in all areas. Like my business coach, Scott Oldford, he's very good, and he's talking about how like the future of AI is going to be like basically like he can feed an AI all of his videos, all of his writings and stuff like that, and it basically creates like a copy of him, and then you can get direct, unlimited coaching from this bot, and you just charge access to it. And in a lot of ways, that's awesome. Imagine if I could do that. Imagine if like, I could download all my knowledge, or at least as much as I could of my knowledge, into an AI chatbot. And then you could have your own personal mark coach. Instead of paying a exorbitant amount of money, you can just pay a little fee. And then all of a sudden, hey, you got your own personal high quality coach. That's like amazing. Yeah. But when we take that and we apply it to the sexual realm, it gets very frightening, because I think that this is going to be something that's going to be hyper addictive for the people who fall into it. I mean, you combine this with VR.
Oh yeah.
Then it's going to be like it's going to be like that the new Blade Runner movie. Did you see that, Blade Runner 2024?
No, but I saw I get the gist. Yeah.
Yeah. So he's got like this, little like virtual girlfriend thing that he's like obsessed with, and it's like the perfect girl. And this is coming. Okay. And you're way better off quitting this stuff now before we get to that point. Okay. Because it's only going to get more and more addictive, and more crazy. And at that point, like it's not just your sexual wiring and stuff that's going to get screwed up. Your entire perception of like human relationships is going to get screwed up. And I guess, at some point it becomes a philosophical question of like, well, is a relationship with an AI still real? The feelings are still real.
Let me solve that conundrum right now for you, so you don't have to ponder it. No, it's not the same.
But I think we're gonna have a whole thing like AI rights movements and things like this because people don't want you to shut down their AI girlfriend and all this kind of thing. And man, just steer clear of it. You don't want to be that guy who's out there picketing the White House, 300 pounds, massively overweight, disgusting, haven't left your house, and you're only there because they took away your digital waifu. Okay, like you don't want to be that guy. So get off this stuff now for sure.
Another reason to quit is that by watching this stuff, you're indirectly supporting, or directly supporting, I guess you could say, these companies that they make a place for really evil people to do some really evil stuff. Even just recently, there was this big deal about how MindGeek, the parent company of Pornhub, is aware of the frankly, it's not very well set up the way they have their authentication process set up for people uploading, because Pornhub is a site where people can upload their own videos. There's an verification that you have to go through where you upload a photo of your ID, but that's not sufficient, because if you don't show your face in the video, you can upload whatever you want. And so people use sites like this to make money off of rape victims, off of human trafficking. And these sites are very aware of it, but they don't care because money is their god. And so they're going to do whatever it takes to make more money. And so by watching this stuff, you're supporting these companies that are giving an outlet for rapists and traffickers to make money off of what they do.
Yeah, it's pretty messed up. It's like there was like a hidden camera thing that exposed one of their engineers who was talking about how like, for sure we've got rapists and sex traffickers making money off of our site, and nothing we can do about it because there's only one person reviewing this kind of crap, and the guy's just like indifferent to it. And it's like, it's insane to me. It's like how morally corrupt do you need to become in order to like work for a company that is helping rapists and traffickers profit? Like that's the most insane shit. The only thing I can assume is that this guy just has used way too much porn. And he's just like fried any sense of morality and decency that he's got, because like, man, it's so messed up. And even if like, the argument would be, well, I don't use Pornhub. I subscribe to my OnlyFans models, and they are, I'm just helping them, and I know there's no abuse there and all this kind of stuff. But the thing is, you're abusing yourself, okay? You deserve a real romantic relationship, all right? And even if you aren't if you're not super happy with yourself, okay, and you don't think you get a girl that you want or whatever it is, guess what? You can improve yourself. And for sure, you can find a girl that makes you happy. There are billions of people on this planet, and many of them are lonely, okay? And they want a relationship too, all right? And a guy can increase his sexual market value by a massive amount just through fitness and career. And so you can do this, and you can get to a good enough place. Now, the big obstacle to this is that if you have brainwashed yourself so much to only be like, sexually aroused by like, 9s and 10s on an attractiveness scale, then it's going to make you feel like, playing this game is pointless. Especially if like you've had some bad interactions with women in the past, you've been low status or whatever. But it's like, man, you're going down a dark route. Like if you as a man refuse this call to self-improvement, this call to become the highest version of yourself, then what you're resigning yourself to is some form of hell. And it's only going to get darker and deeper as our technology becomes more adept at enabling your descent. So, it's, you got to be careful with that kind of thinking and really just listen. You want to be the kind of guy who goes for the real stuff, right? The best stuff. Hold yourself, raise your standard for yourself. I think that's probably one of the biggest things that can make a big impact on a guy's ability to quit porn, is to realize that your dignity places you above this kind of behavior. And the more you can indoctrinate yourself into that line of thinking, the more that's going to be true. And you're going to be able to say goodbye to that. But also the more the positive ripples that you're going to see in the rest of your life occur.
A lot of us, which is really troubling to me, will look at that pornified culture and that the whole world tells us that if you're not hitting 8s and 9s like Dan Bilzerian or something, then you're somehow you're not winning.
Right.
You know what I mean? And
yeah,
I don't think that's necessarily true.
No, of course, it's definitely not true. I was actually tweeting about Dan Bilzerian the other day because I was just scrolling through Twitter or something. I saw a picture of him in a hot tub with a bunch of, scantily dressed women. I don't know if they were prostitutes or escorts, or maybe they just wanted to be around his money and get some clout or whatever. But I remember the old version of me, if he saw a picture of this, I'm talking porn addict version of me, would have seen that and been like, man, why isn't that me? Oh, I gotta get there. I gotta be that guy. I want to be rich and I want to be banging all these hoes. It's because that's what I thought winning was. And that was the general consensus that was fed to me repeatedly by society. Right. And porn only reinforced this idea. But what was funny was that, being 10 years off porn, seeing this picture, my first reaction to it was I hope there's enough chlorine in that water to kill anything that's floating around in it, And at that moment, my little daughter, Avila, she's 4 years old. She brought me over a picture that she had drawn for me. And it's just a little stick figure picture of our family. Actually, I think I have it. Here it is. Yeah, you can see it right here. That's her down there. That's me. And this is her mommy, and this is her grandma. And it just set my heart on fire.
Yeah.
And it was in that moment, it was I started laughing because of the contrast between how I used to think and what I now know is really good. And it, because I was laughing, my little daughter was looking at me what, don't you like it? And I was yes, yeah, Dad is just laughing because I was thinking about how silly old me used to be. And then she's oh, you're always silly, Daddy. And we have this joke where I pretend I'm never silly, and when I am with her, obviously. And so she said that to me, and I had to pick her up and tickle her till she squealed a little bit. And it was just man, it actually made me feel bad for Dan. And I don't know, I hope Dan's happy with himself. I hope he's following his path and doing what he's, God intends him to do. I can't necessarily say that I believe that that's what he is doing based upon, the lifestyle he lives, but I can't judge him. Maybe there's a turnaround God plans for him at some point. But what I did for sure feel was I don't think he has this. I don't think he has this intense warm glow of fulfillment and love that I know for sure I would never have gotten to if I didn't quit porn. If I didn't leave this low level stimulation grab, power hungry megalomania sex freak kind of energy behind, there's no way that my marriage would have taken off or lasted. There's no way that even if somehow I did manage to have a kid, there's no way I would be the kind of father that I am and have the kind of relationship with her that I have now. Because all that stuff, it just, I was saying at the beginning of the podcast, it just gets in the way. It just prevents you from bringing the most good and authentic parts of yourself to the table. And so it's like, ugh, man, I want everybody to be able to feel this kind of stuff. And I know as long as porn is out there and the majority of men are hooked on it, then like there's just this massive blockage in like the spiritual and psychological and even physical health of our populace.
Right now, being a good dad does not get millions of views on TikTok, which is a bummer, because what people are consuming on a day-to-day basis is the custom colored Bugattis and all this crazy stuff.
Yeah.
Because that's what I guess they aspire towards. So how can men like myself become effective role models that the world is lacking while still being influential?
This is a good question. I think one of the things that you have to be able to do is to be able to compete on the level of competence. Okay. Like I believe a lot in becoming exceptional at what you do. Like that's something where Andrew Tate and we are in alignment over that. Like he calls guys to become extremely good at what they do, become hyper competent. And I believe that is necessary. Now, Andrew Tate also utilizes, the flash and the glam and the girls and all that kind of stuff, which is very viral and it's, very easy to leverage on social media and that sort of thing. So if we don't use that, well, yeah, we're operating at a quote unquote disadvantage. But I think that what we have to do is take things in the other direction. It's like we have to learn how to tap into something that is so true, so good, so beautiful, that it radiates off of us. It becomes undeniable. It becomes like it creates artistically in the past it was portrayed as like a halo, right? And that's what we want to be able to create is like have everything that we touch and do have this kind of halo effect to it. And what I think about that spiritually, it's like we want to be able to like have like God's like fingerprint on our work. And when we do that, incredible things can happen. Like you look at, what happened with Oliver Anthony, that country singer who, made that song Rich Men North of Richmond and became like a hyper viral sensation. I didn't like fully listen to the conversation, but I heard that like his whole story was like, prior to getting big, he was just like working this like crap back-breaking job, and he was smoking too much pot and not happy with where his life was going, and he completely gave his life to God. And then like 30 days later, he was like #1 hit. And one of his hits he like literally recorded on a cell phone. Okay, so it's like there is something to that truth. Now, I don't think that's the way it's going to work for everybody. It's not the way it's worked for me, although I've had my own little flashes of that throughout my career where it's just like, hey, that really worked out way better than I thought it was going to. And so like this is what we want to do is like we got to trust that there is a higher game plan here that goes beyond like the gross manipulation of our basest instincts. And so and we focus on becoming like that highest, most compelling version of ourselves, so that like we become so successful, so enticing in our character that people can't help but ask us like, dude, what's your secret? Dude, how do you do that? Like, what drives you? What makes you tick? Because if you reach a certain level of competence, you have that kind of magnetic aura about you, then people are going to want to know. And, if you're, looking to be a Christian or even just a champion of truth and goodness and, all that kind of stuff, then like, that's what you're looking for. Cause then you can say, hey, it's God, or hey, it's the truth, or hey, it's, I believe in these principles. And so that's what I think it's got to be. And, I wouldn't put any limits on how far someone can get following that path. It's like the fact that, for example, just looking at most of the great men throughout history, a lot of them faced incredible odds, incredible pushback, but they found their way to the top without sacrificing any of their morals, right? They didn't need to parade down the street with a bunch of hookers to go viral and to win the hearts and minds of people. So, don't kid yourself into thinking that that's the only way, because it's absolutely not.
Yeah. Guys, if you haven't already, go ahead and click the link in the description here and sign up for the Porn Free Masterclass. You'll be able to see some pages that I built. So if you like them, comment great pages, Pete. I'd appreciate that.
And if they're broken, yell profanities at Pete, please.
Oh, no. I set myself up for failure with that one. Oh, man.
Yeah, make sure you guys check it out. I think you guys will like the conversations between me and Giff. Like I said, another guy who's worked closely with me in helping guys quit pornography. We get a little bit more into the tactics of how to go about doing this sort of thing. And don't forget that we are going to be opening up the new Reforged Man Gold cohort for those of you who want something a little bit more serious, more structured. You really are like ready to like kick this thing out of your life for good. There should also be a link for that, or I don't know if there will be a link for that, or there'll definitely be information on the Porn Free Masterclass for the Reforged Man Gold. And if you're on the mailing list, you'll get all this stuff anyway. So thank you guys for tuning in. Hopefully you enjoyed this. Thank you, Pete, for being here. And ooh-yop, everybody. See you in the next one.